Today's conversation with Maggie Bergin is all about branding and having a brand voice. And I'll tell you, she has the best explanation of what branding is that I've probably ever heard. And I have degrees in marketing, and she explained it in such simple and clear terms. Now, she does kind of at the beginning of the conversation, but it's later when she talks about having that quote unquote one friend. And just the way she lays it out, I think is a beautiful way to really understand when you've got a great brand and when you've got a brand that stands for something that may not be for everybody, but it's definitely for you and for your specific avatar. So I think you're really going to enjoy this one. I have the pleasure of speaking with Maggie Bergin. Maggie is the brand strategist and the founder of Be Understood Branding based in Chicago. She helps emerging brands rise above their competitors by building a distinct, irresistible brand strategy. Maggie believes clarity through brand strategy is the greatest shift you'll see in your business growth and purges the vagueness from messaging to help her clients succeed. Maggie, welcome to the ThriveMore podcast.
Thank you very much for having me.
Oh, it's my pleasure. I'll tell you, I am, they always say find what you love to do that others can't stand, and that's what you'll make money at. And I've found that marketing is something that I love. I love branding. I love the science of branding when so many people get tripped up in it. So this is gonna be a great conversation today because I'm a huge fan of the discipline of branding. It's always fun for me and the listeners to kind of understand the genesis of how you got from there to here. And we'll spend a lot of time today talking about Be Understood Branding, your firm, and kind of the value that you offer. But can you kind of speak to what got you from whatever you were doing to having this business now?
Thank you for asking. I'm trying to decide as you ask that question, like, how far back do I go? Do you know what I mean? Like,
Sure.
and for those of us who are not in our 30s or 40s anymore, it's kind of a decision we have to make. So I guess I'll say this. I spent a long portion of my 20s and early 30s in government affairs. So I was a lobbyist and on the legislative side. And what is lobbying and what is legislating? You're selling ideas. So instead of selling things or experiences, you're selling ideas and programs. From there, I kind of lost my stomach for government affairs as the role of money became more and more and more and more and more in government and our government. And I moved really seamlessly to marketing because what government affairs is marketing. You're just selling ideas as opposed to an object. And then I was doing marketing for many, many years. I loved it. It was like selling blue sky, but I was always wondering why. Why this campaign? Why this product? Why this way of communicating? And what I discovered, as you will know very well, is that the answer to the why is a brand strategy. So a brand strategy is a tool that drives marketing and PR and copy and sales because it's the kind of foundation that helps people look at your company and then know your company.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. For the benefit of the listeners, can you speak a little bit about branding versus marketing? I think they're conflated oftentimes, especially direct response marketing versus branding, and just delineate those two.
I can do it in 2 sentences.
Okay. Wow.
Okay. Branding is your strategy. Marketing is the execution of that strategy, right? So your messaging, your images, your content, those are going to change. Your offers are going to change. Your products are going to evolve. The brand will not, because that is who you are and what you're about.
Yeah, for sure. That's a lot more simple verbiage than I would have put in there. It would have taken me like 4 paragraphs. So that's great. I love that.
I doubt it. I think you would have come to the same thing, maybe with like 4 or 5 sentences.
There we go. Okay. At least double. Talk about this carving out of vagueness. I actually love that phrase too. Carving out of vagueness, because so many, especially there's a lot of people that listen to this show that are small business owners, entrepreneurs, people that are looking to become an entrepreneur. And when you ask them, you ask a lot of people, and I've been guilty of this, where, well, what's your target market? everybody, we work for everybody, because you're so afraid to leave something on the table, which is, is a recipe for disaster. So kind of talk about carving out vagueness and what that looks like.
Well, I will say in all honesty that, quote, carving away vagueness, close quote, is a professional version of my actual brand motto, which I won't say on this podcast so that YouTube and wherever else it's posted will not get unhappy. But let me be clear that is my mission, is to, there's a reason why some brands are distinct and irresistible and others just completely miss the mark. And a brand strategy is all it is like an amalgamation of what science has learned about how human attention works. How do you get attention? How do you hold attention? How do you connect with another human applied to a brand? So because of that, a brand strategy is how you build connections like the brands that we admire, that we see on whatever platform we're in. So unless you're the only company doing what you do, I have yet to work with anybody who's the only person doing something. I mean, everybody does it in their own way, but you need a way to stand out. And standing out is what a brand strategy helps you figure out.
Yep. I can't help but dovetail that with, I've read so many biographies and case studies on founders and startups. And, well, we're different because we do it this way. Yeah, for about 10 seconds until people realize you make cash doing that, and they're going to line up behind you to do it, right? I mean, it's capitalism, and it's a beautiful thing, but your brand better stand apart because your service or your product won't for very long.
Okay, I hear what you're saying.
Yeah.
And I have a totally different reaction when I see that. When someone says, well, this is what I'm doing and this is how I'm doing it. I really want to caution people to not lead with that, because standing out is 50% it's like 30% how you talk about yourself, but it's like 70% how you talk to other people. So when you say like, this is why I do what I do, like this is what entrepreneurs do all the time. They are excited. They're great at what they do. They're passionate. They're extroverts. They love to talk about themselves. Like they were the kid in the front of the stage when they were little, right? No, don't. The first thing that I see always when people come to me is they're very comfortable talking about themselves and their work. And they're not comfortable yet at doing what they should do first. What do you do when someone comes into your store? You welcome them. What do you do when someone comes to your home? You pull out a chair and get them a glass of water, especially now when people are just so, to the top of their capacity for new information or, new assignments. Like, give them a minute. Give them a minute.
Yeah. And we're bombarded now. We are bombarded. So that's good.
I mean, if you look at my follower numbers, like this may not be evident, but this is like how, we all go to sleep at night. This is how I sleep at night. Yeah. When I make content, I just try to always like welcome someone to my situation with either humor or an honest, like, hey, how's it going? How are you? A pause. Like you have to welcome people to what you're up to in the world in order for them to decide. And it's not because like it's a nice thing to do. It's because science says that is how people will figure out if you are for them, if they are for you. So if you want to be, if you want to stand out, then people have to be able to figure out if they like your brand. And communicating with humans, which I think everybody here that's going to be listening is a human, unless it's AI, is like the first thing you need to learn how to do.
Sure. Yes, for the audience, I'm a human and she's a human. No AI involved. This is not a Chat GPT podcast by any means. Well, then that leads to the question: why are companies so vague so often with their messaging?
Human brains naturally want to connect. But I think we think that acting human as a brand is not the way to go. So I think maybe culturally there's a disconnect, but if I had any advice for people, it's to act human. If I had any advice for brands, it's to act human. But for brands to act human, the insides have to match the outsides. And I think sometimes that's very hard. It's easy to do in a small company, in a startup, but as a company grows, acting human becomes more and more challenging.
Okay, Maggie, we've got to expand on that because that's worth going deeper into the rabbit hole. How does a brand act human? Like, if you could unpack that some?
The way that a brand acts human is to have the insides of the company match the outsides, which is what I said. What do I mean by that?
Yeah.
I mean that you have done the work. I don't do this work, but this work needs to be done in order for branding to be successful. Is the insides have to match the outsides. In other words, the values that you claim on the inside have to be true. The things you say that you do for people, the impact of the work you do for people has to be true. If those things are aligned, it is incredibly easy to be human as a brand because you have a document with your brand personality, those brand values, where those values show up, the things you know and love about your ideal client. So the tension, the unrealness, the inauthenticity, I believe, in my experience, comes from the insides not matching the outsides.
Okay, can you? That's cool. So, can you share, in your opinion, maybe one or two brands that really get that right? And of course, you know what my follow-up question is going to be. So two brands that get it wrong. So, what are a couple brands that you just go like that? Look, if you're an entrepreneur and you're trying to model what great looks like, and it doesn't have to be size, right? It just the brand. What does great look like?
Okay, I got one example pops to mind. So I'll start with that.
Yeah.
Hopefully the second one will percolate and appear.
Sure.
The first brand that I absolutely love because the inside matches the outside, and this is the YMCA of America, the YMCA of the USA. So everything that they communicate to their community is grounded internally in their mission and their values, which are extremely clear. Extremely clear. They went through a rebrand about 10 or 11 years ago, and every YMCA, it was a PITA for them because every YMCA is different. Every YMCA has a slightly different mission or approach. So they had to find that common ground that trickled down through all of them and then be clear about what that common ground was, test that it was true, train all the staff at every YMCA. And I think they did a beautiful job.
Is there and that's an amazing organization. Is there, I think it's easy sometimes for me and for the listeners to think of a product, right?
Yeah.
Of a product.
Yeah.
Is there a product that you go, the outside, what the consumer buys and looks at is the same as the inside, just as an example, just so we can demonstrate excellence?
I don't know if the inside matches the outside, but this is a brand that is deeply competent in being human, and that is Pattern, which is a hair product. It's a bunch of hair products. One of the owners is Tracy Ellis Ross. She of Blackish and just obviously like one of the most amazing humans on the planet. It's a beautiful brand. The products are clear. The marketing is creative and genuine. I think the insides match the outsides. I don't know for sure. But whoever built that brand did a chef kiss, gorgeous job.
Yeah. And a very human approach to the market. Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So of course the follow-up question is, what brand has just gotten this wrong where the inside doesn't match the outside?
Well, I recently in my presentations, I do presentations for entrepreneurial groups or startup groups. And my example of how a brand can maybe get it right in the beginning, but if the insides don't match the outsides, then you're going to be in trouble over time is Starbucks. The brand started, if you think about like Dunkin' Donuts and then you think about Starbucks, you might even colors might appear, tastes and textures might appear, experiences experiences might appear. And depending on your awareness or your political position, this may not affect you at all. But a lot of people chose Starbucks and are not choosing Starbucks anymore because of the decisions that the company has made to put profit over people in their perception. So I think that not only does the company have a problem, but I think the brand has a massive problem.
Which is ironic because they were known for offering healthcare benefits and offering this, that, and the other, even
Yeah.
part-time worker. Like that's the Starbucks that I remember. I don't drink coffee, and I have a caffeine addiction with sugar-free energy drinks, just not
Oh,
coffee.
okay.
But my wife loves it too. But that's the Starbucks I remember is
Yeah.
like a part-time barista could make good money and have healthcare. Is
Right.
that and they've changed some of those policies, it sounds like?
Well, there's a unionization effort within the company that the company
Yeah.
is spending a lot of money fighting. So what causes a bunch of baristas to look around and be like, what is going on? We got to do something about this. I'm sure that they took it to their managers and the managers took it to their managers, et cetera. And, they chose
Yeah.
to unionize as a result. I mean, I don't know the details.
Sure.
I hesitate to even mention it, but like it
Sure.
was such a great brand, and I think they've ruined the
Yeah.
brand in a lot of ways. For some people, they don't care, and that's okay.
Sure. Sure. Give me a good cup of coffee and I'll be on my way. Yeah.
Yeah, and that's what the brand was. The brand was, we are in love with coffee. We love, strong coffee. If you love strong coffee, we are for you. And now it's
Yeah.
way more complicated.
Yeah. Yeah. I had written down a question: who benefits from brand strategy and how? But I mean, I can answer. I want you to answer it, but it is a 360 answer, right? Like it's not just the company; it's the community that interface. I don't want to answer that question myself, so kind of speak to that if you could. Like, who benefits then from a really strong brand strategy, and how do they benefit?
Okay, so like I said, the brand building process is built on how human attention works, right?
Yep.
That's it. It's not rocket science. It's a very simple process. So if that is true, then the brand building process is the same, no matter the size of the company or the organization or the industry, because same human brains, same process. So the question, what drives the people we want to serve to take action, is something that every company should be asking. And I'm kind of like, I don't want to like be on a soapbox too much, but I believe it's time to even the playing field. And up until, I'm kind of on a mission to teach small businesses everything that giant corporations know about getting and holding attention. Because like I feel as though, since it's information that's available to everybody, in other words, how human attention works, everybody should get the benefit of that. So how do people benefit? They benefit in that, when you walk into a room and you meet somebody and you just, wait, let me give you a better example. Everybody listening has that one friend. That one friend that, in my case, it's going to be a she, knows who she is and what she's about. She's just who she is. She is unapologetic about who she is. She can laugh at herself. That knowing of who she is and what she's about is what drew me to her. It's what keeps me hanging on to her coattails and like weaseling my way into her heart, because being with somebody who knows who they are and what they're about is very calming. It's very comforting. It's very enjoyable for humans. So all of brand strategy is figuring out how to kind of be that person or that entity that knows who they are and what they're about, so that people can decide, is she for me? Am I for her? Because without that leading with that knowledge that in my industry, we call it brand positioning, people can't decide if you are for them and they are for you, and they're just going to keep scrolling.
Okay, I'm going to retract my earlier statement where I said that was the best explanation, because that was a better explanation of branding, Maggie. Like literally, you're right. Like, is this person? And then when you're attracted, you just want to hang out with them.
Yeah, like Mel Robbins is not figuring out how to niche down. Do you know what I mean? Like Mel,
Yeah.
she's just being herself.
Yeah, that's Thank you for that.
Oh my goodness, you're
that was
welcome.
brilliant. No, I mean that was again, the brilliance is in the simplicity, and that was a great way to explain it. Because at the same token, because I've said, I mean it's not my words, but I've always said, a great brand attracts and repels. If you don't repel somebody, you don't have a brand. And just like that friend, you'll have that great friend, and some other acquaintances will be like, well, I really don't dig her or him. Good, because that you're not supposed to. Not everybody's
Yes.
supposed to. Yeah.
Consumers make decisions. I hate to even say the word consumers because it like dehumanizes things so much, but
Yeah.
consumers make decisions built on trust. And brand strategy is how that trust develops.
Yeah. 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 You've mentioned a couple times on the need to interface with your customer, the need to even interview your customer. And when I was doing some research on you, I read about the ideal client interview guide. What is that? And tell us about that.
I love working with all my clients. So before I allow them to hire me, I make them agree to something that is very uncomfortable for 75% of them. Some of them, they're like, yeah, no problem. My last client, actually, she was like, yeah, no problem. But a lot of people have a very hard time, which is why I make them agree to do it. And that is, the owner of the company or some high up person in the company must conduct ideal client interviews in order for a brand strategy to work. Right. So remember, it's 30% how you talk about yourself. It's 70% how you welcome someone to your table. Well,
Yeah.
understanding the worldview of the people that you want to serve, that's the price of admission to get their attention. So if you don't understand their worldview, if you can't articulate articulate what you have to say in a way that's aligned with their worldview, then you're SOL. So and we're not asking like, what kind of coffee do you drink, or what neighborhood do you live in, or what kind of car do you drive? Ideal client interviews are 30 minutes on the phone, no video, no electronic form in which people can detach from their heart and get into their head. And they are interviews in which you come to understand people's worldview. So what belief systems did you grow up with? What's your relationship to those belief systems now? What do you think your purpose is here? What keeps you up at night? Where do you feel like you're falling short? Where are you just killing it? Those are the questions you ask in an ideal client interview. And the reason I insist on people doing this is because the people who you want to be in service to will tell you exactly how to pull out a chair for them and get them some water.
Yeah. It's brilliant. It's brilliant. So in an ideal world, branding would be done before you launch a product. You would have, all that. But I'm hearing you speak about like you kind of need a little bit of a customer base to get it right. Can you talk to that?
Yeah, great question. Thank you very much. Yeah. So what do people need? How do you know if you're ready for a brand strategy? You need an offer. Mm-hmm. You need an offer, and you need to have in your mind what the benefit of that offer would be. And then you need to have in your mind 10 people who might benefit from that offer. They don't need to have purchased it, but like one of my clients is building an app for older adults. They had not launched the app, but we knew that we needed to talk to kind of older folks. Beloved olders is the term we learned, we decided to call them. But so they knew they had to talk to older folks, and they knew kind of where they wanted them to be geographically. So we just found them. But they can also be, friends or people that you worked with at your last company, or people in the company who, feel comfortable sharing that kind of like personal information. Sure. But you don't have to have it. It's helpful if you have some ideal clients like already like in the can, so to speak, but you really don't have to. But you do have to have an offer. Otherwise, like, well, what are we working on? And second, you have to have in mind a kind of an idea of your ideal client.
And then just to follow on that, usually there's, you pick an avatar and then build a brand message around an avatar. But what I'm hearing from you is more pick your settle on your values, put that stake in the ground, and your avatar will come to you. I mean, you, of course, will look for that. But if you can talk about the ideal customer, the avatars, it's always often called, how that is in, I guess, in the order of events. Trying to break this down for any listener and me too, in the order of events. That is it branding first, then the avatar, then of course the marketing message. But how do you see that chronologically happen?
I think an idea comes first.
Okay.
So the offer comes first, the product comes first, either whether it's a service or an actual physical thing. And then you're creating that product or promoting that product or service, right? Because you think that you have a particular unique approach to it, or it's a growing field and you want to be part of it. So the offer comes first. Then before, I think values are important, but what's way, 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 way more important is the impact that your product or service will have. So what are the human needs that your work addresses, for example? And what positive human experiences does your brand evoke? What negative human experiences does your brand mitigate? And how? Then maybe we can talk about values, but please, please, please do not just figure out what your values are, because that is about you. And remember, that's only 30% of the equation. What's way more important is to figure out where your values show up in your work, so you can figure out where your values are going to appear for and impact your ideal client. So if you're somebody whose value is, one of your values is loving, if you tell me, Roger, if you told me one of my company's values is we are loving and supportive, I don't care. If you tell me one of our values is that we love and support people, and as a result, we do the following on the back end of our company, or we've organized our customer service in the following way, or we always lead with a positive message in our marketing, like those things matter.
Makes sense.
Does that answer your question? So offer first, the human emotions that your work impacts, and how the positive emotions that you create, the negative ones you mitigate. Then values, sure, but more importantly, where do those values show up? And that's an evolving process, right? Because especially if you're a startup, you may not have built your full back end. So if one of your values is, I worked with like a digital theft protection company. One of their values was obviously like confidentiality. Well, they hadn't built things out yet. So they're going to add to that value down the road in terms of where it shows up. But so identifying it is important, but it's not the whole picture. God, I felt like I went on forever and ever just there. Sorry.
That's okay. You've killed so many other answers that it doesn't matter. You're way ahead.
Oh, stop.
Okay. So what are the first few? I mean, I think you kind of taught, if somebody is going to, and we'll talk about how people can engage with you at the end, so they can find you and whatnot.
Okay.
But if they've got a brand, they're doing okay, they're bringing in some money, but they know that this is nowhere close ready to being scaled because they don't have their branding put down. It sounds like that interview with your ideal client, that's step number one. Like before you pass go, before you collect $200, that's the first one.
In my process, it's the fifth one, actually.
Fifth one, okay.
Yeah. So go ahead.
Yeah, you've got when I look at your website, you've got like a 6-step process.
Yeah.
If you can walk, and again, I think it just helps people conceptualize, hey, building a brand is a process. It's not just an afternoon, offsite and we're done. It is a process. Kind of walk us through that 6-step process, and that'd be great.
Oh my God, I could talk about this literally all day. It makes me so happy. So I'm looking over. You guys can't see this, but I'm looking over at my office shelving, and I have probably 12 books on branding. Okay. I'm going to save everyone tons of time right now. They all say the same thing.
Okay.
Everyone has a little nuance that's a little bit different, but they all say the same thing. Brand strategy is 6 things. It's, and you can identify them in any order that makes sense to whatever process you're going through. Here's the order I go in. We figure out what your brand personality is, both what it is and what it isn't. We figure out what your differentiated advantages are. So basically, the answer to the question, why you? We figure out what the values are, what your brand values are. And like I said, more importantly, where those brand values show up for the people that you're going to be serving. We figure out what the human emotions are that your brand addresses and how. We figure out brand, then we do ideal client. People have been doing their ideal client interviews that whole time. Then we look at the ideal client interview results and we find patterns and we figure out how to say, I see you and here's how I can help when among across all the patterns that we hear. And then we do the hardest thing. And this one makes me so nervous still, Roger, because everything else is it's like I have exercises. There are exercises for that. I feel like, you have a fitness company. Can I blah, blah, blah? Yes, there are exercises for that. But the last one, it's a little bit of magic. And you always have to wonder is the magic going to show up for me this time? Yeah. And the magic is what we call brand positioning. So brand positioning is you take all of the stuff I just described and you coalesce it down into a description of kind of where you're planting your flag in your industry. Where do you play in your industry that other people do not? And then why would that matter? And you figure out a 2 or 3 sentence way to sum that up.
Yeah.
And that's it. That's all the brand strategy is. And then it's a document, it's an electronic document, and you can have people sign an NDA and hand it to them. How is your marketer going to create content? Hand them the brand strategy document.
Yep. What I heard there at the very end, that brand positioning, I'm a big fan of, get out of the red oceans, look at the blue oceans, because I forgot who the authors were for Blue Ocean Strategy, but kind of that. And I think that's what you're leading to. So brand positioning is find out how to get into that blue ocean that's not bloody with shark and, shark infested waters and whatnot. How do you help people find that quote unquote blue ocean?
I joke with my clients that you should take a lot of showers in the next 2 or 3 weeks because that's oftentimes where it comes to you, that magic, right? Do you have any gardening tasks or organizational tasks? Your mind has to be you kind of have to be soaking in it a little bit, but then you got to go do something else.
Yeah. Yeah.
Is that your experience as well?
Yeah, of course. It's always when, and I don't have a pad next to my nightstand, and I should, because it's always 2:00 in the morning. Oh, that's a great idea. I just got to remember that. Of course, you fall asleep and wake up, and it's
or
gone.
Working out. If people work out, oftentimes they'll be in the middle of a workout, and something will come to them. And then we play, we iterate. I explain to my clients we're not done until this is done. I'm with you until we figure this out. And it does take some time, but for a CEO can be very, very annoying.
Sure. But
everything else, you can create content without the magic of a brand position, and it'll still connect. But it's like the little cherry on top.
I can't help but want to rewind the tape just a second. And you talk about brand values. You've talked about that several times on this during this conversation. Do you differentiate in your practice brand values from company values? So a company should have a set of values, and that's how you make hiring, firing decisions and, tough decisions. But a company may have several brands and independent, distinct brands, especially if it's a conglomerate or something. How do you see that? Do you see the brand values being completely independent, or maybe there's some crossover, but completely independent of the company values of how they hire, fire, reward, measure performance,
Yeah, I don't, it may be the same, it may be different. Jamie Oliver comes to mind as somebody who started as an individual chef and has become a giant brand. Well, his personal values became the values of the company. So anything's possible. Let's keep it simple. This should be accessible to all. Those were kind of his personal values around food, and those translated very easily and beautifully to the brand values. But I think for some companies, it's different. I've never worked with a company where there's a big difference between someone, I'm sure that exists, but that's I think that's probably above my pay scale. Do you know what I mean?
Sure.
I think if that's what's happening, that's a company that, can afford the $50,000 to $70,000 of a full tilt boogie soup to nuts brand strategy firm hire.
Sure. Well, and you work with a lot of great small businesses and emerging brands, getting them to helping them scale with their brand strategy. And I'm sure you're probably under NDAs on some. Is there one, and you don't even have to mention it by name if you don't want to, if you can, that'd be great. But is there one that stood out that was just more fun? That was just like, telling your significant other, I can't wait to work on this again today because it's just so much fun.
That is so hard to answer. Because
pick your favorite child. Pick your favorite child. Yeah.
Well, I'll tell you the one that I've had the most, that's meant the most to me. How about that?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So I'm 50 and my parents are both still alive, and mostly I would say this to them. So this is not like me being, different in the front and the back. They're mostly, they got it mostly together. Like they're mostly cogent. One is real good from the neck up and one is real good from the neck down, and betwixt them both, Okay. So the client that had the most profound impact on my life was Viva Valet. And Viva Valet, you can look them up. They're doing their beta tests now in a suburb of Chicago. And it is an app for older adults to help them stay in their home longer and more safely, in connection with their adult children, but driven by the older adults. So Viva Valet came into my life at a time when I was really struggling with finding peace in relation to looking after my parents. What does it mean to be a kid who cares deeply about these two humans and who sees opportunities for them to live better lives or make better choices or have more comfort or ease or health and wellness. And Viva Valet, I conducted ideal client interviews, which I don't usually do, but I felt so connected to their mission that I asked if I could. And I interviewed older adults. I did not interview my parents because I felt like that was like too close, but I did interview older adults. And the things that the older adults told me gave me such peace. And one of the things that one of these gentlemen said, I'm almost going to cry. It literally has been such a blessing to me. He said, my son comes into my day, comes into my life and starts telling me what to do. And what he doesn't realize is that I am not going to become him. He is going to become me.
Oh.
So I don't have favorite clients, but that process of building something for older folks and understanding the respect that they deserve that I wasn't understanding has had the most profound impact on me. And it's really saved my relationship with my parents because they get to be humans now. And I do not get up in their business and I can just enjoy them. Is their life more challenging? Maybe. Do they not make great choices? Maybe. But that's on them. They get to choose.
That's a beautiful story. That really is. Wow.
So Viva Valet. I encourage anybody who, is a child of the 80s or who's a little younger, who has, aging parents, to just look at Viva Valet. They're not ready to launch everywhere yet, but just put them on your radar. They're very, and also the team was so special. These women, there was this female CEO and female, CEO founder, and then a president, but these women were amazing.
Thank you for sharing that. That's
Thank
really
you for
cool.
asking.
Well, I'm a child of the 80s or 70s, really, and both my parents are getting up to that point. So, and it is just that simple statement. It's funny. These, I know we're talking about branding, but one of my biggest takeaways is going to be, I can't be him. He's going to become me. I can promise you the next time I talk to my dad, it'll be a little bit different conversation. I'll have a little bit more respect. Wow. Thank you for that.
I'll be forever grateful for that man for sharing that with me. Yeah. It was an honor to be in conversation with him. And it's an honor to be in conversation with you. Thank you.
Yeah. Oh, thank you. And you wouldn't have learned that had you not done the ideal client interview.
Yeah.
I mean, honestly, isn't that funny how it all comes full circle? Full circle. Yeah.
It's almost like I kind of know what I'm doing.
Yeah, exactly.
If you
The harder I work, The
If you
luckier I get. Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, um,
So
uh,
it's people can find it. It's $37. I just need to like kind of cover basics. I'm not, making $1 million on the ideal
sure.
client interview guide, but I want people to engage with their ideal client. So it's maggiebergin.com/ideal client. You can also go to my
Okay.
Instagram page, and it's the link in my Instagram page. My Instagram handle is Be Understood Branding. So if you're on Instagram, go to Be Understood Branding and then just click the link, and you can see if what I've written is interesting and compelling to you. If you want to start talking to your clients, please, please, please start talking to them. If you don't buy my thing, go buy somebody else's and do it. It'll change your business.
And Bergin, of course, it's going to be in the show notes, but Bergin is Bergin. Bergin.
Yep, it's
Yeah,
the
easy
Irish
way.
spelling.
The Irish spelling, love it.
Yeah,
Well, two more questions for you. One,
sure.
and we never know. That's the fun part about life. But where do you see Be Understood branding in, let's call it 3 to 5 years? I used to ask 10 years, but that seems like forever. The way things are progressing and changing so fast. So where do you see your firm, and what do you see it doing 3 to 5 years from now?
I want to thank you very much for asking. And
Yeah.
I'm kind of psyched that I have an answer to
Yeah.
the question, because there's definitely been, this is year 3 of Be Understood Branding. And so there were times when I did not have an answer, but I really want to add, there's 2 pieces to a brand, right? There's everything we've talked about, and then there's the visuals that augment and reinforce everything we've talked about. Well, I have such respect I respect the design industry so much and those skills so much. I would never even attempt.
Yep.
So I want to add that half of a brand to my firm. So now I and others would help with the brand strategy. And then from there, we can pick colors. There's somebody on board that can pick colors, fonts, and create a logo and visuals for you that have everything pulling in the same direction, as opposed to, you do the logo first and then you're like, oh no. So I want to do that. And then I want to figure out a way. And I mean, if your listeners have any advice or counsel on this, or if you do, I would love it. I only work with people one-on-one right now because I feel like my zone of genius is like, if without sounding like a jerk for saying that's the way I can help people the most. But I kind of want to help more people. So my question is, do I do like a digital course? There's a million digital brand strategy courses. Like, why do another one? So I want to figure out a way, like a middle ground. I mean, my prices are ridiculously low, I think. But, is there some way for me to serve more people, be of actual use to more humans who are building things in a way where it's kind of less time, but like the same information?
Yeah. Well, I'll share with you, and you know this. Yeah, there's a million digital courses, and most of them suck. So if you build a great product, if you build a great course, if you build something that has tremendous value, people, they want it. We all want, just give us something that's high quality that really, really, really works. So I wouldn't limit yourself at all to, regardless of what's on the market. It's all about delivering value. 100% about delivering value.
Can I tell you the smartest decision I ever made?
Sure.
So I come from both my parents were educators before they retired. And so when I was like, this is so easy. Why are people not like, why do not more people not know about brand strategy? I understood very clearly that like knowing something and teaching people something, especially adult learners, is like, those are 2 very different skills. So I hired this woman named Dr. Carrie Graham, who has a PhD in adult learning. And we took my curriculum and she helped me figure out how to actually craft it and present it in a way that adult learners will completely love it. So I give full credit to Dr. Graham.
So smart. So smart. You're right. Because just because you can do doesn't mean you can teach. But those who can do and teach,
Amen.
Home run.
Amen.
Home run.
Amen.
All right. So I'm going to call you back to, you said you had 12. I asked the same last question to everybody.
Okay.
I'm an avid reader. People know that I just absolutely love to read biographies, business books. And you said you had 12 branding books over to your right. So is there one of those that the real question is, what book did you read that had a profound impact on the direction that's gotten you to this point in your life and sitting here, on this podcast with me? Is there one that you can share and say, it's this book, and it just, the light bulb went off. It was an epiphany, and it doesn't have to be a branding book, but
No. The only book I can think of, the thing about branding books, Roger, is like, they're very boring.
Sure.
So there was one branding book that really like laid it out as clearly as I had seen so far, that this is not rocket science. This is this is very simple stuff. And that was Star Brands, is the name of the book. And the author's last name, I can't remember her first name, but her last name is spelled Rogoll. But I will warn you, it's extremely dry, it's like an academic kind of book, which is fine. But the real answer that I wanted to give you was the Ramona Quimby books. Because it was like the first book I read when I was a little kid where like people were having emotional experiences, and those emotional experiences were part of the conversation and process. So I was like, oh, you can have emotions, and this is such a weird way to end such a great conversation. I'm sorry, but that's what came to me.
It's an authentic way. Yeah.
Yeah. Just got to be human. The temptation is always to like not be human. Right. So there was like this whole series of this little kid who was having all these emotional experiences, and the people around her weren't saying, you're crazy, that doesn't make any sense, calm down, be quiet. Like they were engaging with her around those emotional experiences. Yeah. And that profoundly impacted me and grounded me. And I think it really does have to do with branding in a way.
Yeah. How old were you when you read those books?
Oh, probably 7, 8.
Yeah. Isn't that funny how it's crazy how when the right thing comes into our life at the right time, it changes our trajectory. Yeah.
Beverly Cleary and Judy Blume, both. Yeah. Those two authors. I was like, oh, okay. This is what it means to be human. And these things are okay. It's okay to be human.
Yeah. I think when an author writes a book like that or a series like that, it's the greatest gift they can give, because it empowers people, right? Brené Brown's done it for us as adults, right? She's done it for us, like she's the Judy Blume for adults.
I agree. I agree. And you know what, Roger? I was just thinking the other day, we need a Brené Brown, but somebody who studies denial as opposed to like shame or, Anyway, well, we'll talk about that next time.
Yeah, I love it. Well, thank you so much for your time. I am so grateful that you took this time. And again, we'll have how to contact you in the show notes that you shared earlier. And for $37, that sounds like a steal to me. Like that's a no-brainer. That's an absolute no-brainer. A lot cheaper than making branding mistakes, I can tell you. So is there anything at all that you want to leave the conversation with? Anything that you want to share with the viewers, or anything else?
I want people to remember that they are really great at what they do, but being great at talking about what you do is a different skill. Those two, there's no overlap. It's not a Venn diagram, but that doesn't mean you're not great at what you do. It just means it's a different skill, and you can build that skill and communicate exactly the impact of your work.
I love it. Thank you so much for tuning into the ThriveMore podcast. Don't forget to take a look at the show notes for any resources mentioned during the show. And if you haven't already, be sure to hit the subscribe button and turn on your notifications so you have access to the latest and the greatest. I'd also like to remind you to check out our website, ThriveMoreBrands.com. There you'll find information on the brands we support and information on franchising. Thank you again for tuning in. And until next time, always remember to set your intentions for the day and strive to thrive.